Welcome back to Watch the Booker Man and to the WCW Nitro Fall Brawl special. We are still 6 days away from that show. We've got a few signings to confirm beforehand. Hopefully you are looking forward to the big show that we have planned, namely the World Heavyweight Championship match between Booker T and Mike Awesome. There's also a big showdown, Jerry the King Lawler's WCW debut against Tommy Dreamer, a rivalry that runs very, very deep between those two men, and we will get a huge blow-off in a match that I've really been looking forward to booking, the stipulation that if Jerry Lawler defeats Tommy Dreamer, Dreamer will become the official court jester of the King's Court. Doesn't bear thinking about. We also have the World Tag Team Champions in non-title action against former World Tag Team Champions is all we know about them, unless you watch the last episode in which you know exactly who they are. And we also have Sugar Shane versus Psicosis for the WCW World Cruiserweight Championship, and the other match on the card, which I definitely should know because I've pre-booked it, Mentor versus Protege. It is Jason Jet, currently known as just Jet, versus Chris Kanyon, currently just known as Kanyon. So there we are, surgery for Val Venus. That's the headline news that I show you all this for. I could just go show to show, but then you wouldn't know that Val Venus has had successful surgery on his elbow. So I'm probably going to just skip through now unless anything interesting happens. But yeah, I'll see you at WCW Nitro. Something that I think is interesting has happened. Stone Cold Steve Austin putting in the star performance at WWF Unforgiven. We're a pretty long way away from these, it has to be said. But Devon Dudley wins the title from Perry Saturn. Given that Perry Saturn turned up in no fit state to compete a couple of weeks ago, that is fair enough. We've also seen the WWF Light Heavyweight Championship change hands. Scotty 2 Hotty defeating Jerry Lynn in a cell match, a Hell in a Cell between Jerry Lawler and Scotty 2 Hotty. And this is the company that we're trying to chase. I mean, I know people have criticised my booking, but come on, give me some credit compared to that. To be fair, I'd quite like to have seen that just for the absurdity of it. Jerry Lynn's contract is up quite soon, actually, I think, so he is somebody on our radar. Maybe not just for the Cruiserweight division, but he's got a history with a lot of guys in the company, so I think he is somebody who I will consider once his contract is available to negotiate. There's a few contracts coming up in the WWF. I'm not sure if it'll be this episode or the next episode that I get the chance to look through that, but some, not big names necessarily, but big enough that we're going to be interested in them, and I think it's going to be an interesting bidding war to follow for certain. Chavo Guerrero back to fully fitness as we get to the day of the show. No major news throughout the week, to be fair, and nobody's getting the night off. We don't do that. I will. New England 3,000. I want more people than that for this show, to be fair. So Southwest we were in on the 5th, the 19th Southeast, 22nd of August. I'm just going to do New England. Actually, I've decided that I don't care where it's going to be. The Portland Exposition building, I think we've been here before. We then need some creative energy to be spent, so I think a character idea, I like how they work, to be fair. A bit of a gamble for Chuck Palumbo, just discard it, waste of time. I'll try and get a more generic one. I'm not going to use these gambles, what's the point? We have 96 left, so probably 2 more things that I can get here. Let's try and get an angle idea. Likely to succeed with Lance Storm, that's absolutely fine with me. 56 points. Yeah, I want a character idea because there's some people who's, I'm just discarding it. So yeah, pretty unsuccessful use of our points there. But we'll go into the weekly fights backstage. Hugh Morrus and Reno scrapping. Psicosis, don't argue with Nelson Knight. Physically separated. I'm assuming that means peeling Psicosis off the floor after Nelson Knight just destroyed him. Fit Finlay doing his drills. Charles Robinson doing an awful job of being the morale officer. Or maybe it's the guys in the back who are the problem, to be fair. Van Vader's come with an idea, happy with that. I'll see whether that's a big risk or whatever afterwards. I'll try some team bonding, whatever, we'll see how that goes. Strengthen the relationship between me and Arn Anderson, Diamond Dallas Page and Dusty Rhodes, who are already friends, and created tension between Booker T and Fit Finlay. So yeah, whatever, not too fussed about that. It is now time to book Fall Brawl, a show that I'm really looking forward to, especially the fact that we're getting the chance to defend the titles on a big show. And Big Van Vader's angle idea is a safe bet. I'd argue that this is his way of begging me to put him back on screen after a few weeks off. Nice job, Big Van Vader, and it probably is going to play into his favour. I'll show you the booking screen just to see what we've got pre-booked there and what we are working with for tonight's show. A pretty sizable roster, but the card is pretty much filled out, so it should be a fairly easy one for me to book tonight. One that I'm really looking forward to, and hopefully you agree with my booking decisions. We'll see just after I have booked this show. So Fall Brawl is now in the game, and while this booking analysis screen does give away a spoiler to a pretty surprising match result, I did just want to show that everybody on WCW's roster is used tonight in some capacity, but it also serves as a shield for the booking screen because there is something that I do need to show you, and that is that we are over our match angle ratio for the night. Now, usually I would do my very best to stay within the ratio, but this is Fall Brawl, so the idea is that it's a special episode of Nitro, and as such, you should expect to see more wrestling than usual. Now, I could have cut one of the matches. Jet and Kanyon could easily have happened next week, as could the 4-on-4. Any of the matches apart from the main event could have been saved, but I didn't want to do that, and I've said it before, but the match angle ratio is so wrong on this because 59% implies that there's about 50 minutes of wrestling. Now, there's 12 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 9 minutes, 6 minutes, and 10 minutes. So that comes to a total of 53 minutes of wrestling. Now, for some reason, that addition includes the non-wrestling time, so the entrances in matches and other stuff like that, which as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't, because actually we've got 39 minutes of wrestling on a 90-minute show, and we're now going to be penalised for having too much wrestling. So it's something that I definitely don't agree with. It's something in the game that I think is basically set up wrong. It should be in-ring action, bell to bell, that takes into account, not the entrances and stuff. So there's a few things that I can do to negate this. I could turn off match angle ratio in the preferences, but I've said before, things with chemistry and settings like that, I don't want to, where I don't have to, make changes. But of course, if this show gets under 65, the company will be kicked off TV unless that mechanic's changed, but I don't think it has. So I've got a couple of ideas, going from basically the most simple things I can do to the more elaborate ones, and I'm just going to talk you through it because, like I've said, this save, I want to show you everything I do and not just cut bits out. I'm going to explain what my plan is for tonight's show, and it begins with the booking of the main event. Now, this is one that is in no way really a workaround. It's simply me making use of one of the features in the game, and I'm going to put a creative finish on this. We've got two that are likely to succeed. This one expires slightly sooner, so I will use this as the finish to the match, and I probably would have put this as a wild brawl had I not had the issue last week. So we're going to go steal the show here and hope that Mike Awesome and Booker T can give us a main event to remember. And there's one other thing I'm going to do, and that is to do with Booker T's interview. I think this is probably going to be the best angle on the night, so I'm just going to go for an angle idea, and that's also likely to succeed. So if we stick that on there, on what is a fairly basic promo from Booker T, it should hopefully mean that our best angle is just that little bit better. Now, the other thing that I'm going to look into is the product settings. People have mentioned this to me several times, to be fair, and it's something that I did change in previous games, the product settings, so the focus of our products, and I am going to just see what the game suggests for that. So the match focus, regular focus is 70% main event, 20% the best match outside of the main event, and 10% of the rest. We've got 90% for the main event focus, and then the 3-ring circus is the best 3 matches, I believe. The ensemble focus is calculated at 40%, and so I'm not going to do that. I think we will go with the main event focus, and I can change this as and when I like, I think, as the owner of the company. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't go for tight focus with angles, unless my brain is not quite understanding it. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do, and this is another thing that somebody suggested to me, you can, so when you're a certain way through your booking, go back to the booking screen, and that means that I'm fairly confident that if I get to the main event segment and then go back, save the game, and then go into the preferences, your preferences, and tick off match ratios, I should get away with it. So basically, I'm going to run the show, get to that final segment, back out to the booking screen, save the game, go forward to our final rating, and if it so happens that our rating is below the 65, I'm not ashamed to say that I'm going to go back and change the settings so that we don't get kicked off the air. Now, if the main event really struggles and gets a 65 rating, the rest of the show's really bad. If it's because of that, I'll go through and I'll deal with it and I'll end the save here. If this show is under 65 justifiably, then I'll be absolutely fine with that. But it's Mike Awesome and Booker T in the main event, so as far as I'm concerned, there's a next to no % chance of that happening, and it's just, again, a mechanic that I really don't like in the game, one that I feel is set up wrong, and it's not even the point that I think it's unfair to lose points for having too many matches over angles. I think that's fair enough, that's how products are set up. It's the fact that if I'm a few minutes over, then all of a sudden it's going to knock off a huge amount. Maybe if it knocks off 2 or 3 points, I could get behind it. But this is something that knocks off many, many points from your ratings. And as far as I'm concerned, that is just set up badly in the game. And if it's going to be that ends the series, then I'm just simply not going to have it. So with all that rambling and complaining, to be fair, about the fact that I booked this like an idiot and could have just cut one of the matches. Yeah, I'm doing it my way, and hopefully people agree with the overly explained logic that I have shared there. We will now go into WCW Nitro for the night, and the pre-show sees Super Crazy and Tajiri defeat 3 Count in 6 minutes and 28, and the Young Dragons defeat Jamie Noble and Kiwi in 4 minutes and 37. We then get something that actually plays into an angle on the show, and it is Buff Bagwell defeating Big Vito in 5 minutes and 54 with a blockbuster. So he got that dark match that he'd been begging for the last few weeks, and this will of course play into something that comes on screen in just a moment. Nitro itself begins with a look back at last week's main event, where Rob Van Dam was able to defeat Lance Storm to become the new United States champion. Welcoming viewers to the show, Mike Tenay and Don Callis inform us that following last week's main event, there was a controversial moment between Lance Storm and Shane McMahon when the show went off the air, and there are reports that Lance Storm put his hands on the owner of WCW. As a result, Lance Storm is not here tonight as Mike Awesome challenges Booker T for the World Heavyweight Championship in the main event of Fall Brawl. Now, it's not particularly great ratings there to kick off the show, but we do go into what I think will be a really good opening match. Sugar Shane Helms defeats Psicosis in 7 minutes and 59 by pinfall with a Verta breaker. This match was designed to revolve around a lot of high spots. It is the 4th defense of Sugar Shane's championship, and during the match when Juventud Guerrera looks to try and get involved, AJ Styles also comes out, acts as essentially a deterrent. I meant to put that in there. I'm sure I put that in there actually. I put at ringside notes for Juventud Guerrera and for AJ Styles, so I don't know why that's not showing there. After the match, we do see him on screen, so all good. Sugar Shane gives a nod of recognition to AJ Styles following the match, as like I said, he decided to join Sugar Shane at ringside once it became clear that Juventud wasn't just there to observe. Juventud leads Psicosis up the ramp, Lucha Real ready to regroup, and it's clear that things aren't over. Juventud Guerrera still wants the Cruiserweight Championship, and, well, Sugar Shane is a fighting champion. With that said, Juventud will need to earn that shot going forward. Shane McMahon is then interviewed in the back. A good segment. Maybe this is the one that I should have put the angle idea on. In fact, the fact that it's using Buff Bagwell's storyline as well, I definitely should have. But Shane McMahon is asked about the nature of his interaction with Lance Storm last week, and he's voluntarily giving up the information because he feels it's important to address what happened, but not to blow it out of proportion. He doesn't like Lance Storm, and Lance Storm doesn't like him, but he has been a vital part of WCW since Shane took over. Last week, Lance overstepped the mark. He got a little bit too passionate after that main event, and as far as Shane's concerned, the issue has been dealt with. As Shane appears to be done with this in a pretty short address, he is approached by Buff Bagwell. Buff asked Shane if he saw his victory in the dark match before the show, and Shane McMahon says that he didn't. He was busy preparing for Nitro, but he'll get a full report from Arn Anderson later in the week, and if he's happy with what he sees, then Buff Bagwell may just get another look in next week. Buff looks pretty pleased with himself for picking up the win, but it wasn't quite what he wanted to hear from Shane. He's still looking for that new WCW contract. Shawn arriving at the building earlier today in a short segment that doesn't rate very well, and that's pretty fair. Booker T and challenger Mike Awesome were seen entering the arena, each of them alone of course, with Lance Storm not being here. The commentators promoted the main event, a huge challenge for Booker T after Mike Awesome pinned him, albeit in controversial circumstances, just a few weeks ago. He'll have to get the pinfall back on Mike Awesome if he wants to leave as the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. We then get the Natural Born Thrillers coming down to the ring, and it's just them trying to put across their personalities as usual. Their open challenge is up next. Who wants it? Chuck Palumbo says that every team that they've faced so far have been rolled over with ease, and they want to see who is coming next. Sean O'Haire says that he knows these guys have held championships in the past, and apparently this is one of the most decorated tag teams in the world. They're not ready for the Natural Born Thrillers. So all about the supreme self-confidence of Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire that hopefully doesn't veer too much into unlikability, although with where their next rivalry goes, I do think that they're probably going to be the ones not getting cheered as their opponents become clear. But this match, hopefully, it's not decent, it's a bad match. They defeat the Rock and Roll Express, who aren't even put in as Rock and Roll Express, which really bugs me, but the Natural Born Thrillers defeat them in 4 minutes and 2. Sean O'Haire pinning Ricky Morton with a senton bomb. Now the Rock and Roll Express, of course, a legendary tag team, had a great renaissance in real life, but around this time they weren't getting booked much, and I think just putting him there for a few minutes is okay, and the Natural Born Thrillers stand tall, raising their titles in the air and making it clear that they're ready for whoever comes next. Coming out from the back, Elix Skipper and Kid Romeo make their way to the top of the ramp. Romeo says that Chuck, Sean and Shane have been looking all over the world for these tag teams to face the champions, but they've not looked inside WCW. They've been looking to the past, to these old has-been teams. Again, a little bit harsh with Ricky and Robert still in the ring probably, but they are the now and the future of the tag team division. That's why they were the first ever Cruiserweight Tag Team Champions. So if it's former champs they're looking for, former champions they've got, they want the Natural Born Thrillers, and they want them next week. Chuck and Sean gladly accept this challenge, and that match is on former Cruiserweight Tag Team Champions versus current World Tag Team Champions on next week's Nitro. A video package looks back at the rivalry between Jerry the King Lawler and Tommy Dreamer, showing the differing philosophies of the two men involved, and we're going to see the condescending tone that Jerry Lawler has taken throughout this rivalry compared to the gritty, violent style of Tommy Dreamer. This rivalry, of course, reached another level when the King, who had previously just been making jibes on commentary, cost Tommy Dreamer and Hack in their World Tag Team Championships match against the Natural Born Thrillers. Since then, Sir Nelson Knight arrived on the scene, flattening Tommy Dreamer and assisting in the kidnap of Francine, so things have really escalated in recent weeks. Francine only reunited with the Extreme Outsiders when this match for tonight was made. Jerry Lawler said that sure, he'd give Tommy Dreamer the match, it could be an Extreme Rules match even, but when Jerry Lawler beats Tommy Dreamer, Jerry Lawler will have a new personal jester for the King's Court, and that man would be Tommy Dreamer. Dreamer accepted this stipulation because he is that desperate to get his hands on the condescending King. Jerry Lawler is then interviewed in the back by Scott Hudson, and we put all this over his hatred for the extremely crappy wrestlers, and he is extremely confident about victory tonight. He is handed a jester's hat by Sir Nelson Knight, and he laughs as he tells Tommy Dreamer that he cannot wait to put this on his head tonight. He can say goodbye to his extreme ways and hello to membership of the King's Court. A good job from Jerry Lawler, particularly the second part of the segment standing out where he is interviewed and he improvises very well, advances our storyline ahead of Lawler Dreamer tonight. Hugh Morrus comes down to the ring taking a microphone before entering, and he pulls out that card that Kwee Wee gave him a couple of weeks ago, and he wants Kwee Wee to come to the ring. He's made his decision. Instead, Lash LaRue comes out from the back and looks to convince Hugh Morrus not to even consider taking this offer. Lash LaRue says that Kwee Wee cannot be trusted, but Hugh looks straight through Lash as he summons Kwee Wee out from the back. Kwee Wee, a really hard name to try and shorten that, isn't it? Kwee Wee comes out with a smile on his face, rubbing his hands together on what he assumes, given the tension between Lash and Hugh, will be a positive answer. He tells Hugh to say the word, and he will help fix him. Now, this choice of words doesn't actually sit well with Hugh Morrus, and he asks what Kwee Wee means by fix him. Is he implying that Hugh Morrus is broken? Kwee Wee laughs and says, well, look at you, you've been sat in rooms, rocking back and forth, watching back old footage. You're not exactly in the best place, are you, Hugh? I can change that. Kwee Wee then opens his arms to Hugh Morrus, who strikes him with his palm, a slap that drops him to the ground. Hugh then lays a series of boots into the body of Kwee Wee, with even Lash shocked at how brutal this attack becomes as he is just laying boot after boot after boot. We've seen it in his WWE developmental days as a trainer where he was really harsh on people, so we really want him to lay it in thick here. Hugh Morrus then heads to the top rope and hits a moonsault, crushing Kwee Wee under his weight. He then flashes yet another stern look at Lash LaRue before storming off up the ramp, so he has certainly rejected the offer of Kwee Wee, but still that tension between Hugh Morrus and Lash LaRue as we lose heat to the Angry Man's storyline. We then have Rob Van Dam walking in the back. He's got the United States Championship on his shoulder and he is feeling good. We're told prior that he will appear in the ring later tonight to address the fans. Billy Kidman walks up to him and he wants to be the first to congratulate Rob Van Dam on his victory last week. Rob says that it's been 7 days, so he has spoken to a few of the guys since then, but he thanks Billy for the gesture nonetheless. Billy says that he's been thinking back to their victory over Lance Storm and Mike Awesome a few weeks back. He feels that that helped Rob build the momentum towards what happened last week, and he says that he'd love to share the ring with Rob Van Dam again, but this time as opponents. He says that the fans deserve to see that dream match. RVD kind of shrugs and says, yeah, that would be a cool match between the two of us, but he knows Kidman isn't the only guy looking for a shot at the United States Championship, so he thinks that basically Kidman's going to have to fight his way to a title shot, but says it in the nicest way possible in a segment that also loses heat to our storylines. And think basically matches build a lot of these storylines up, and then the angles that are booked knock them back down, but it is what it is. Following the entrance of their opponents, Dustin Rhodes, Diamond Dallas Page and Johnny the Bull gather. DDP cutting a short promo, putting over the fact that they have beaten these guys in the ring's asses time and time again, but since there is 4 of them, they thought it'd be best that they invited someone else to join in on the action so they could put an end to this once and for all. What they did to Johnny the Bull last week is going to look like child's play compared to what is coming for those guys. The 4 young men are cocky in the ring. They don't care who they've got. Who's it going to be? Dustin Rhodes says that it is his great pleasure to introduce his father, Dusty Rhodes, back to WCW, so hopefully a nice surprise pop on this Fall Brawl episode as he joins the 3 men who look ready for war. His gimmick gets a very good rating, the American Dream of course, although this isn't a great segment and an average match follows. Dusty Rhodes with a 49, he's still better than 5 of the 8 people in the match. That is a little bit concerning. I know it's largely based on his overness, but you'd have to say this wasn't where a lot of people would have seen Diamond Dallas Page from the start either, is it? He's got a 67, so he's not done that well himself. But it is actually Dustin Rhodes who pins Mike Sanders, and we're going to basically have the match breakdown. Reno and Johnny the Bull, that's the key point, sort of brawl off, so it ends up back being a 3-on-3 to be fair, and then Diamond Dallas Page can hit a diamond cutter to each of the peaks of perfection, leaving Dusty and Dustin to deal with Mike Sanders. Dusty can basically have the match won, but I didn't want to give Dusty the pinfall, so he tags his son in, and Dustin Rhodes gets the pinfall in the end, and the faces stand tall in the ring. Johnny the Bull actually not there, that's inaccurate, but that's a decent segment to be fair, as Diamond Dallas Page, Dustin Rhodes and Dusty Rhodes, 3 very popular figures, celebrate what will surely bring an end to such a one-sided rivalry. But the idea of this wasn't that we were bringing DDP down to a lower level, it was my way of introducing Dustin Rhodes in a way that basically tried to present him as an equal to DDP, and hopefully it's done that. And now it's been 3 or 4 weeks that DDP's sort of been down at this level, but he can go and do his own thing now, and Dustin has his father by his side. The second half of the show opens with an interview with Booker T. The angle idea was a success and gives us a 75, so that's definitely a good sign, and he puts over the challenge of Mike Awesome. Booker says that he admits that Lance Storm not being here does take away part of the challenge or the headache in preparing for the match, but that doesn't mean he's underestimating Mike Awesome. It took 2 men, a title shot and an awesome bomb to keep him down last time, but basically Mike Awesome is the only person who's pinned him since WCW came back, so he'd be foolish to take him lightly. He's faced some tough challenges since winning this title back in March of 2001. In fact, it's exactly 6 months ago today that he won that. I didn't notice that this is 6 months from the final WCW Nitro. I probably would have made a thing of that if I'd have spotted that beforehand, but Mike Awesome may just be the most dangerous man in WCW when you look at the path of destruction he has left since this company came back, and he is ready to go toe-to-toe with that man in what I'm really looking forward to as a sort of solid B-level World Heavyweight Championship match. And I just think we can make Mike look like a killer in this match, while Booker T also just doing his thing as the top babyface in the company. Pretty happy with this actually, a 61 rating. It's a hardcore match, and the idea is that Nelson Knight's involved early on, but then Hack, the first time that anybody gets the better of Nelson Knight to be fair so far, because Hack is just absolutely smashing the hell out of him with the kendo stick. They brawl up to the ramp. Hack has him on the edge of the stage, and Nelson is just absorbing shot after shot after shot to the point that Hack has to put the cane around his neck and he throws him back. So the White Russian leg sweep by Sandman to Nelson Knight sends both of them crashing, so they are completely out of contention, and this means that Tommy Dreamer can have Jerry Lawler right where he wants him, sets him up for the Dreamer DDT. When jumping the guardrail, Brian Lawler appears with a crown which he clocks over the head of Tommy Dreamer. Jerry Lawler can then hit the pile driver to Dreamer to pin him for the 1, 2, 3. Now Brian Lawler gets a great rating for his The Prince gimmick, so good things all around there. A really good rating for the match as well, and I think we finally get a bit of catharsis of Hack taking Nelson Knight down, but the bells and whistles of the match hopefully has carried it to a 61. Joined by his son in the ring, Jerry the King Lawler is helped back to his feet as the ace up the King's sleeve. The Prince, Brian Lawler, stands by his father. Heading to the outside, Brian brings the jester hat in from ringside. He hands it to Jerry. Jerry manages to shake off the pain that he's in from the brutal match. We don't want to undersell that, but Brian has a huge cheesy grin on his face. You can see it on his image there, to be fair, and that's just something, when you think of Brian Lawler, Grandmaster Sexy, you just remember that daft grin on his face. And if you're hopefully getting heel heat for him, I think he's a very, very effective heel in that regard. Lawler then forces the hat onto the head of Tommy Dreamer. The King's Court not only now has a crowned prince, but also has a jester in the shape of Tommy Dreamer, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that over the next few weeks. Lawler then tosses Dreamer to the ground, leaving up the ramp, albeit looking worse for wear himself, and he does have to use his son's weight to support him in walking up to the back. Steve Corino cuts a promo in the back. He is stood with Bob Sapp and Dawn Marie, and unfortunately we didn't have time to give this storyline too much tonight, so it is just 2 quick promos that advance this storyline. Corino says that last week Bob Sapp beat David Flair to within an inch of his life, and the NWA World Heavyweight Champion was done with David once and for all until Billy Silverman tried to make himself famous. And now, next week on WCW, Steve has been informed by Shane McMahon that he will have to defend his NWA World Heavyweight Championship against somebody who hasn't done a damn thing to earn that title shot. Corino laughs though and says that's completely fine with him. He'd never miss the chance to humiliate a Flair live on national television. So because of Bob Sapp's technical defeat to David Flair last week, we are now getting this match on the next episode of Nitro. Rob Van Dam then comes out, and this is a disappointing segment, to be fair. I'm not surprised. It advances 4 storylines somehow, so I don't know what I've done there, but Rob Van Dam comes out to the ring, cutting a promo about how he defeated Lance Storm at the 3rd attempt last week, and how he's sure that the controversy of that finish to the match will lead to them going at it one more time. But tonight, Lance isn't here, so Rob Van Dam has basically the floor to himself, and he just wants to talk about the journey he's come on since coming to WCW to now being the United States Champion. But he is interrupted by Chavo Guerrero. Chavo wants to be not the first, because we've even had Billy say that and he wasn't the first, but Chavo wants to congratulate Rob on his victory, saying that he knew RVD had something special from the night he debuted against him, and yeah, he beat him in his debut at the Big Bang. With that said, Chavo was caught unaware that time, and things would go differently if they faced off again and he had the chance to prepare. RVD says that it's pretty easy for them to try and prove that, and as it looks like he's about to challenge Chavo to a match, Billy Kidman comes out. He's then staking his claim. He wants a shot at Rob Van Dam. The people want to see this dream match, although this is more of a dream match in Billy Kidman's head than it is in anybody else's reality. But this just leads to Chavo and Kidman bickering again, as they did a couple of weeks ago. Jimmy Hart and Kurt Hennig come to the top of the ramp. Hennig says that Billy and Chavo are bickering like a couple of kids. They seem to have a personal issue that the two of them need to sort out, but neither of them have a record worthy of a shot at the United States Championship. Kurt Hennig, on the other hand, certainly does. As the 4 parties continue to debate, Shane McMahon joins Jimmy and Kurt on the ramp, and he says that there's a simple solution to this. He's going to make Chavo versus Rob Van Dam next week and Kidman versus Hennig next week. That'll go some way to clearing up this situation, and depending on how the results of those matches go, we may well have a new clear contender for the United States Championship, and if not, then we've got 2 good matches anyway, a few good matches already announced for next week's show, and I'm going to make sure to put these in the game because I do so often forget to set the things that I've pre-booked. So it's Kurt Hennig and Billy Kidman in a singles match, Chavo Guerrero and Rob Van Dam. That might even be next week's main event, and then we could do like a main event segment with the World Heavyweight Champion or something. And we've also got pre-booked, if you remember, Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare versus Kid Romeo and Elix Skipper. Yeah, so that's fine. I always like to put matches in alphabetical order of the non-title. That's why I was worried that it'd say Elix Skipper and Kid Romeo, but I really don't need to worry about daft stuff like that. And I can't remember whether I feel like there's one other match that I pre-booked. Oh yeah, of course, David Flair versus Steve Corino. Sorry, that's going to be the other way around because it's a title match. David Flair versus Steve Corino. Can we set it as the NWA one? I don't think. I'll work out to get an NWA World Title defense on my show before next week. But that's 4 matches. So again, we fill up the card. So there's going to be a lot of wrestling next week. But that's that segment done. Brian Lawler and Jerry Lawler are then shown leaving the building. Lawler's looking a lot better after the match and they're heading home, approached by Scott Hudson in the parking lot. Lawler is asked about his plans for Tommy Dreamer now that he is the official court jester of the King's Court. Jerry starts by cackling and says how proud he is of his son. We just want these two. I know how annoying Grandmaster Sexy and Jerry Lawler are capable of being, so we're just going to ask him to do that. He says that his son is the crown prince of his kingdom and he is so proud of what he did tonight. As for his plans with Tommy Dreamer, he's going to lay them out for the world next week on WCW Nitro, but rest assured, he will be putting Tommy to work, given that Dreamer is a bum who has never worked a day in his life before, so not that good of a segment either. Losing heat to the storyline after a really good match, but yeah, just setting up that Lawler, after winning, is now going to make clear exactly what it means for Dreamer to be his jester on next week's show. We then get that match that was spoiled previously. Jet actually defeats Kanyon in 5 minutes and 54 with a roll-up. Kanyon is in complete control. He is dominating Jet, and Kanyon was furious about the booking of this match. I hope he doesn't quit, because that's probably an overreaction, and the way the storyline goes, Kanyon does obviously come out on top over these two, but Canyon's basically telling Crowbar to get a better look. This is the lesson, and it's even worse because Jet challenged him this time, so he really wants to make the point clear to his proteges that they must not step out of line. And Crowbar gets up on the ring apron and he sort of is asking questions to Kanyon as if he's intrigued and interested, but it's actually to distract him, and Jet rolls him up for the 1, 2, 3, handful of tights even, just a bit of payback for him. Kanyon debuted a new spot that's going to get him heel heat, and his psychology will be helped, so that's really good. But after the match, Jet celebrates, complete disbelief on his face. He rolls out the ring after it because Kanyon is straight up and kicking off. Jet celebrates the biggest win of his WCW career so far, thanks in huge part to his fellow protege Crowbar. In the ring, Kanyon absolutely loses his mind. He's in complete shock about what just happened, and he blames Crowbar, the referee. Anybody else who will listen, he says that Jet took advantage of the situation. He's furious with everybody, and it's only made worse by the smirk on the face of Crowbar, who knew exactly what he was doing when he got up on the apron and basically distracted Kanyon, and Kanyon is absolutely livid to see that smirk on Crowbar's face, and that's quite clearly going to be followed up in the future. David Flair then cuts a promo in the back. He's fired up. He's done with the words of Steve Corino. Flair says that the only humiliating thing in all of this is Steve Corino walking around proclaiming to be the real world heavyweight champion when everybody knows that he couldn't lace the boots of his father or any other legendary NWA World Heavyweight Championship title holder. As Flair continues his fired up promo, he is cut off by Rodney and Pete Gas, who are wandering through the back. They tell David to quit whining. Nobody likes a crybaby, and if there's one thing that they personally can't stand, it's people who expect to be handed stuff when they haven't earned it just because of who they know. Of course, ironic coming from those two guys, but self-awareness has never been the strong suit of Pete Gas and Rodney. A bad segment, but it does advance the Real World Championship storyline going into David Flair versus Steve Corino next week. Now we have Big Van Vader. A video package airs showing his international escapades with Pro Wrestling Noah. He will return to Nitro on next week's show. And speaking of the Real World Championship, the actual World Championship match gets an 80 rating, so that's really good. Happy with that. The Road Agent note was still a show. I am interested what it would have got with Wild Brawl, but Booker T with an 84, really, really good. The commentary letting us down, but we get the crowd buzzing, a successful creative finish, so no complaints really can be had. Booker T defeats Mike Awesome in 9 minutes and 40 with a scissors kick, and it's essentially a clean finish. I don't want it to hurt Mike Awesome too much because we do want this to be near falls and him almost hitting the Awesome bomb, but Booker T manages to get out of it. I did think about booking it where Mike Awesome goes to powerbomb Booker T through a table on the outside, but Booker T rolls out, hits him with a bookend and then rolls him into the ring. I just think it's too convoluted, and we're probably having too many main event matches that have overbooked finishes, so I just want this to be a hard-hitting, good back-and-forth brawl, but it's just that the intelligence of Booker T beats out the might of Mike Awesome, and of course that doesn't mean they don't go to the outside, throw each other into guardrails, steel steps, and that can be where Booker T gets the upper hand, but I didn't want it to be something as convoluted as using a table spot or whatever, so Booker T defeats Mike Awesome. So this should be a decent enough episode, right? So the champion stands tall, fairly straightforward. We do have the commentators strongly put over that this is the toughest challenge of his reign so far. I'm going to go back to the booking screen here and then go back to get our final rating. Do you want to finish the show? Yes. And it's a 61. So to me, because we were 4 minutes over the upper limit, it's not, I'd say maybe even 15 points off this. A 75 rated segment, considering I put this as main event focus as well in the product. I'm just not having it. So yeah, I'm going to exit out and make it so that we don't get kicked off the air. It might be seen as cheating or gaming the system, but yeah, like I said, if you want this series to continue, and I certainly do, then that's what we're going to have to basically do. I'm properly making a pig's ear of this whole save, aren't I, to be fair? I bet when you saw this rebuild, you didn't expect it to be this shoddy, to be fair. Your preference is enable match ratios, get rid of that. I don't want to make it our default setting because I do actually want to change it back after this show, but the fact that it's a special episode of Nitro and presented, I know it's not a pay-per-view quality card to be fair, but sort of presented as such, we'll finish the show. And it's a 76, so yeah, it's literally knocked 15 points off because we were 4 minutes over, and bear in mind that's 39 minutes of in-ring action on an hour and 30-minute show. I've worked my way around it, so I should just get over it, shouldn't I? But we've gained popularity in Hawaii, and it's, I think, a really good episode. It does feel a little hollow to have one of our best episodes of Nitro be because of something like that, but the alternative was literally me ending the save. That's the only way I've got to look at it. I can be annoyed at myself that I've had to do this. Mike Awesome in some of the best matches we've done as well, so credit to him there. We will rename WCW Nitro Fall Brawl back to WCW Nitro. Again, I've had suggestions, change the product, change this, change that, but I think just ticking a box when I need to is just simpler because, yeah, the game annoys me quite a bit. I don't know if you noticed that. I don't know how clearly that's coming through, but there we go. WCW Fall Brawl in the bag. I'd really enjoy this if it wasn't for actually having to put it all into the game. And then dealing with all the shit that comes out of it. But it is what it is. We're okay, aren't we? And we're just going to go through now to the end of the month because it'll be October the 1st when I want to start the next video, because the plan is to do like a 3-month check-in. I know it's not technically 3 months that we've done, but basically at the end of June we started Nitro, so we've had July, August and September of solid full schedule months. So that means that when we get to the 30th of September, I am going to stop this video here, and then I'll join you next time on the 1st of October. It's going to be sort of a recent wrap-up sort of thing going on. Ken Shamrock getting plenty of work, so we should be nice and ring ready by the time that we do bring him in. But look at that, another record rating for us, so I may have cheated, but there we go. The best episode so far. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll be back on the 1st of October for a 3-month look at what's happened so far. And also, I spotted a few days ago, we've got a little bit of a contract season coming up for the WWF, so we'll be looking if there is any big names that we can steal from the company to strengthen our WCW roster, and there's 1 or 2 names that I've particularly got a solid eye on coming in for November. But I'll see you next time, hopefully with some new signings.